Hi, seventh graders. Happy Monday. I wanted to just kind of review for you that last week we read this short story. It's called The Elevator. And our purpose for reading this short story was to pay close attention to tones that the author is using and how do those tones convey a particular mood, paying close attention to our main character, Martin, and how some of his behaviors are very telling about who he is as a character. But one thing I really noticed a lot of people had an issue with this particular story was that it ended on a cliffhanger. And I had a lot of kids ask me, is there a second story that goes with this? Is there an ending somewhere? And the answer is no. This author in particular chose to leave it on a cliffhanger so that we, the reader and audience, can kind of create the ending on our own. And so this week, that's actually what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking really closely at this story again, paying particular attention to the author's techniques, different choices, and we're going to use those author's choices and techniques, and we're going to kind of practice it in our own writing. So what we're going to do this week in order to work up to the end of the week is we're going to spend Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday looking closely at different things that this author did in their writing that we could use in our own writing. And then on Thursday and Friday, you guys are actually going to write the ending of this story. And we're sort of going to mimic what the author has already done and make sure that our ending really fits this story nicely. And so, again, I just kind of said what we're doing this week right here. The first thing we have to do before we start writing a story and being creative is start to pick up on good authors' writing styles and habits, and then kind of learn to mimic those when we write as well. Because sometimes our creativity makes us a little bit sloppy. So we need to learn how to rein that in, be creative, use all of these techniques, but do it in a way that makes a story really nice. And so today we're going to focus on imagery and strong, vivid language. So we're going to notice that this author in particular, William Slater, uses a lot of imagery and really strong, vivid language in his story in order to make this story suspenseful and good for readers. So I want to remind you that imagery is used by authors to help create a specific image in your mind. So when you're able to picture what's happening in a story, that's probably because the author has used really good imagery or really strong, vivid language to paint that picture for you in your head. So, imagery is where an author appeals to our senses. They make us smell, taste, feel, see, and hear things that the characters are hearing and seeing and feeling, so we feel like we're there with the character. So we're going to watch this short video together on imagery, and then we're going to practice finding some examples of imagery in this story.
We have 5 senses. Writers often appeal to these senses to bring their stories to the reader's imagination. For example, what sense is the author appealing to in this sentence? The author is appealing to the sense of taste. What other senses might a writer appeal to? Can you envision this moment? This is because its writer is appealing to the sense of sight. Can you hear it? This is because its writer uses words that suggest sounds. Writers also can suggest the sense of touch. Finally, writers can appeal to the sense of smell. All of these examples use imagery. Imagery appears when a writer appeals to the 5 senses. Imagery helps bring the passage to the reader's imagination. Which senses does this sentence appeal to?
All right, we're going to stop there. So obviously in the video, they talked a lot about different examples of imagery that authors can use to appeal to our 5 senses. And what you might have noticed in that video is They did that by creating or by using really strong descriptive language in order to make us feel like we're smelling what the characters are smelling or make us feel like we're hearing what the characters are hearing. So imagery is created through really strong language and word choice that we use as a writer. And so,
We have
video.
5.
So now we're going to talk really quickly about vivid language. And so in the text, obviously, we want to use really descriptive words and language in order to create an image about what is happening. So sometimes the imagery that's being created is the author is giving us lots of descriptive detail about like a setting. Other times, the author is going to give us descriptive detail and use strong, vivid language about what a character is doing. And so we're going to look at this video clip that's all about vivid verbs. These are verbs or action words that are used by authors in order to make things more creative and be more specific about events that are happening in the story and the experiences of the characters. And so the purpose of using really strong, vivid verbs or just really vivid words in general is to be more descriptive and make the story more exciting. And so we're going to watch just a little bit of this video clip because it's cheesy as all heck, but it's kind of fun. So we're going to watch a little bit about vivid verbs, and then I'll show you in the next slide how to locate really strong examples of vivid verbs and imagery in this story so that we're able to try that when we write our own creative writing story.
Vivid verbs make your writing more fun. Vivid verbs can be used by everyone. Vivid verbs, choose the best one for your writing. Vivid verbs make your writing more exciting. You could use the verb run or make your writing more exciting. Use a vivid verb like dart, dash, bolt, rocket, gallop, zoom, sprint. You could use the verb eat or make your writing more exciting. Use a vivid verb like gobble, chomp, munch, nibble, inhale, devour, demolish. You could use the verb jump.
Okay, I think you get the idea, even though this is the coolest video that you'll probably see this year. So you guys, we want to use really strong, vivid verbs to describe what characters are doing. That's part of imagery. That's giving us a clear picture as to what's happening in the story. And so when we go to write our ending of this story and we become authors ourselves, we want to remember that really good authors use strong, vivid verbs and imagery in their writing in order to make the writing more interesting for the reader. And so let me show you an example. Come on, here we go. Oh my gosh, we're going to watch it again. Just kidding. Okay, so guys, this is just a little section from the story, The Elevator, and I'm going to show you where this author uses really strong, vivid verbs and also imagery, and you're going to see just how much this author does that because that's part of this author's writing style. So when we go to write our ending of the story, we can't just not use vivid words and not use imagery because then the story is not going to flow because this author uses a lot of that. So when we go to write ours at the end of the week, we need to make sure that we're using the same writing strategies as this author so that our writing flows. So I'm going to read this, and then as we read it, I'm going to stop and I'm going to jot some things down on my screen. So it says, one morning the elevator stopped at the 14th floor and a fat lady got on. She was wearing an old green coat that ballooned around her. As she waddled into the elevator, Martin was sure he felt it sink under her weight. She was so big that her coat brushed against him, and he had to squeeze himself into a corner. There was no room for anybody else. The door closed quickly behind her, and instead of facing it, she turned around and stared at Martin. All right, guys, we're going to stop there. And let me get my color here. So I want to show you some examples of imagery to start. So remember, imagery is where the author gets really descriptive about what is happening, like what they're seeing, what they're smelling, what they're tasting, what they're feeling, what they're hearing. And so I'm noticing that a little bit in here. I'm noticing that she's wearing an old green coat that ballooned around her. The author's giving us that visual of her own green coat and just how big that is. Then we have here, he felt it sink under her weight. Now we're knowing as a reader what Martin was feeling. Okay, we're noticing what he's feeling. Here's this. She was so big that her coat brushed against him, and he had to squeeze himself into a corner. So now we know that visually, we're knowing what he's seeing. This lady must be really big if she's like rushing up against him and he's having to squeeze himself into a corner. And so right now, the author has given me lots of detail about what he is seeing in the elevator. In addition to that, I want to show you that the author also uses vivid verbs in here. It tells us that the coat ballooned around her. That's a vivid verb. It doesn't just say the coat, she was wearing an old green coat. It tells us that the coat ballooned, which gives us that clear picture of what the coat is like and just kind of how big it seems. I also noticed that he says she waddled into the elevator. That's a vivid verb because instead of saying she walked into the elevator, we're seeing that waddle, which kind of makes me think of penguin, like a little bit big, kind of waddling into the elevator. So I'm able to picture how she's doing that because of that vivid verb. And then lastly, this right here is a vivid verb as well. He had to squeeze himself into a corner. Him having to squeeze into the corner gives me a picture of just the type of uncomfortable environment that Martin is in. He's not just having to kind of go into the corner, he's squeezing into the corner. So it must be a really tight space. All right, let's keep going and see if we could find more vivid verbs and imagery. All right. He looked at her for a moment. She had large, fleshy cheeks and no chin, just a huge mass of neck. Her blue eyes were tiny but sharp. They seemed to be boring into Martin's face. So I'm noticing that she has large, fleshy cheeks and no chin, just a huge mass of neck. That really gives us a picture that she is a large woman. She has like a huge neck. That imagery right here, huge, massive neck, is the author using very descriptive words to give us a picture of the neck instead of just saying it was big. Huge mass really, really emphasizes how big it was. Her blue eyes were tiny but sharp. All right, here we go. Martin looked away, but the woman didn't turn around. Was she still looking at him? He glanced at her quickly, then looked away again. She was still watching him. He wanted to close his eyes. He wanted to turn around and stare into the corner, but how could he? The elevator creaked down to 12, then 11. The piggy eyes were still looking at him. She had to be crazy. Why else would she stare at him like this? What was she going to do next? So I'm noticing here that it's telling us the elevator creaked down to 12. It's giving us that sound creaked, which is imagery because it allows us to hear what the character's hearing. Then here, the piggy eyes were still looking at him. Piggy eyes is descriptive language that kind of gives us a picture as to what her stare must be like. All right, let's go ahead and finish up. She did nothing. She only watched him breathing loudly until the elevator reached the first floor at last. Martin wanted to run past her to get out, but there was no room. He could only wait as she turned and moved slowly out into the lobby. Then he ran. He didn't care what she thought. He ran nearly all the way to school. I'm kind of noticing that this author used the word run or ran a couple of times in this one sentence, or I mean, this one section. And I'm kind of going to critique his work. I feel like he could have used a more vivid verb here in order to be more descriptive as to how Martin ran. Because Martin is terrified. So he didn't just run. He probably sprinted. Sorry, my handwriting is going to be awful. Maybe he sprinted. Okay? Or maybe he darted like we heard in the video. And so when we go to write the ending of this story, we want to be just like this author in that we're using lots of imagery, like I underlined in green, and trying to use as many strong, vivid verbs as possible, like I circled in blue. Oop. All right, I'm going to go ahead and come on, screen. Of course you're not working. Here we go. Sorry about that, guys. Always an internet thing. Oh, here we go. Hold on. Come on. There we go. Oh, man. All right, whatever. So we're going to go here. So I want to just kind of reiterate that when we were reading that passage, we should have noticed that this author uses strong vocabulary. This author uses lots of vivid detail and verbs. This author uses clear and detailed imagery. And then they did a couple of things like having us see what a character's thinking, creating tension, that type of stuff. And we'll talk about that later. So when we write the ending of the story on Thursday and Friday of this week, we want to continue using imagery to paint a clear picture of what's happening in the story. And we also want to use vivid verbs to be more specific to the story and make the story more exciting. And so when you write the ending of this story, I am going to be looking for and grading your use of imagery and vivid verbs in your creative writing piece to end this story. So guys, reach out to me if you have any questions about this. If not, please make sure that you're doing your weekly check-in. If you have not attended our Google Meet, then you need to mark that you were not present for this lesson, but you watched the video and write your 4-sentence summary to show me that you were kind of engaging and participating in the lesson. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of the day.